All right, folks, it's Friday once again, and welcome back to Orbit. This week, I'm going to be running solo once more, this time without the cam though. And today, we're going to be talking about PlayStation and Xbox once more, once again. Next gen machines are finally fully revealed to us. They've finally been fully revealed in all their glory. We've gotten a full teardown of both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. We know the specs of each systems. We know the prices of each systems. We know virtually everything about these systems, except in the PlayStation's case, we don't necessarily know what the UI is going to be like. They're saving that for later, I guess, for some reason, even though we're about a month away from the launch. Actually, a month from tomorrow is going to be when the Xbox is launching, and that's beyond crazy, beyond exciting. It's crazy, absolutely just wow. Um, so yeah, we're sitting at the cusp of a new generation, and these consoles are so uniquely designed and they're so different that I just had to talk about them. And I do want to say this is not a console war video. This is not a which one's better video. It's not a this one sucks and this one's better, or vice versa, whatever. It's just me talking about these two systems that are different because I think that it's such an exciting thing that these two consoles are so unique in their approach to next gen gaming in terms of hardware. In terms of software, they're basically doing a similar thing, but that's something we've discussed before with Sony's treachery. We're not going to be talking about software. We're going to be talking about games. Sony lied about next gen games being exclusive to PlayStation, but that's not what this is about. This isn't about that. No. This is about hardware. So right off the bat, I just want to start off with the system that I'm actually the most excited for in the hardware space, and it may shock some people who know me, but PlayStation excites me the most in terms of hardware. Reason being, it's got the most interesting and weird way of doing things. Now, Sony has opted for less raw horsepower in favor of more SSD speed. And that SSD speed is almost twice as fast as the Xbox's SSD. So yeah, you're gonna be able to do a lot of stuff with that. I mean, your games are gonna load lightning quick. They've already showed off some of that with Crash Bandicoot. I mean, not Crash Bandicoot. I'm sorry, Ratchet and Clank of Rift Apart with the quick loading and everything of the worlds. But I think that what Sony really needs to do is just show us some games loading on it. Like Microsoft has done. And I feel like in the coming weeks we're probably going to be getting that. But I would love to see them doing demonstrations that are similar to what Microsoft's doing, and of games loading super quick. We saw some stuff with Demon Souls with the SSD, with how fast the load times were compared to the old one. So I really want to see them showcasing that a lot more. In terms of graphics power, they've decided to go for 10 teraflops, which is opposite of, well, not opposite, but different from Microsoft's 12 teraflops that they've stuck in the Xbox Series X. So the graphics power of the Series X is just well over the PlayStations, and they're running just about, looks like about the same in terms of CPU power and speed. They're both using 8-core AMD Zen 2 CPUs, clocked in at around the same amount. So not too big of a difference there, but the biggest difference is in the graphics card. And a lot of people have theorized that Sony's, opting to lower the just the teraflops of this machine. And another thing too that people haven't really been, I guess, another thing too that people, I guess, haven't really been focusing on too much is the fact that, and I heard it said a few times in the beginning, but I've heard people talk about it less and less and less. But RDNA 2 cores RDNA 2 cores and an RDNA 2 teraflop is way different than the teraflops that we have right now. So that difference of 2 teraflops is actually much bigger than it may seem, because RDNA 2 is a completely different architecture, so it's not even comparable to what we have now in terms of teraflops, which is just something to keep in mind. So from what I've gathered from some videos that I've watched and articles that I've read, that 2 extra teraflops that the Xbox has is actually more substantial than it may seem. Not that it really matters because I'm sure the PlayStation is going to have amazing looking games regardless. I mean, 10 teraflops of RDNA 2 is still pretty damn amazing. But interestingly, what Sony's vision for this console is, and that's one of the most exciting things in both of these console standpoints, and what gets me excited about both of them is that they have like this vision, and Sony's vision is trying to make gaming as seamless and as immersive as possible, which really, each generation they like designers go in with a different philosophy. We all know the notorious Xbox One philosophy, where it was like you're all in one video game system, yada yada yada, and it was bullcrap and everybody hated it. But with PlayStation, we've got this sort of ideal of like, eliminating load times, making the game seamless, making it so that you're never taken out of the experience for anything. You know, almost sort of like kind of removing the how do I say it? It's kind of hard to say. But like when you have loading screens and when you have like menus and stuff like that, getting rid of stuff like making it so you don't really have to look at things like that as much as you used to. You don't have to look at loading screens. The game is seamless. The world is seamless, and that really reminds me of one of the most famous examples of seamless game design, which was Jack and Daxter, which I believe was the first game that had an open world, seamless world where the character wouldn't see loading screens for the entire game because as they walked around, the game would load. And actually, Mark Cerny did mention Jack 2 as a part of an example of what the SSD technology can do when he did his original tech release, where he was talking about the technology of the system and everything. And he was talking about how in Jack 2, there were really long corridors because those long winding corridors would make it so that you could load more of the game. Now, a lot of games nowadays, especially in the age of fast travel with these big, massive open world games, you're going to see load screens no matter what. And what Sony is trying to do here is to eliminate that, to make fast travel actually fast and instant, as they say. And I think that that's really interesting. I think the idea of making this SSD faster so that game designers don't have to design around hardware as much, where they have more creative freedom. I really like that philosophy with what Sony's doing here. And Microsoft's doing the same thing. They don't have an SSD that's as fast, but they definitely designed their own proprietary SSD technology, which they're calling the Xbox Velocity architecture that, from what I can gather, developers are having a great time using. So, it's a win. It's a win on both sides. But for Sony, with their SSD, what excites me the most about it is not what third parties are going to do. And what excites me the most about PlayStation hardware, especially these days, is what first party studios are going to do. I'd say ever since PS3, first party studios for PlayStation have really known how to utilize the most out of Sony's hardware. Look at the PS3, look at Killzone 2, a game that looked amazing from its release all the way up to the end of the generation. It was one of the best looking games. They came out in around 2008 or 2007 or something like that, right? But that game looked amazing because that was Guerrilla, a first party studio. They knew how to use Cell in a way that would get a game that looked that great. And same thing with PS4 when you look at the exclusives there. And PS4 was a breeze to develop for developers. But when you look at that system, even in that case, first party studios are able to really push hardware. And this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It's because of the fact that when they're working with third party studios, they have to make a version that's compatible on every single system. So you can't really push hardware on one system with its, specific specs. You have to consider the specs of everything, etc., etc. You know the drill, right? So I'm really interested and fascinated in, getting that glimpse of Ratchet and Clank. And I've got Demon's Souls on pre-order. I can't wait to play it during this holiday. Getting Ratchet and Clank and Demon's Souls, these two games that are going to be utilizing, let me say that correctly, utilizing this SSD utilizing this SSD technology in such a way is something that's very, very exciting to me, because you see it in Demon's Souls with the seamless load times and not having to wait to get through certain fog gates and things like that. And in Ratchet and Clank, being able to just jump through these different worlds and everything, like stuff like that, it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. I can't wait to see more of what they do. And another game that I'm excited about, and I said I wasn't going to talk about hardware, but I mean, I said I wasn't going to talk about software, but here I am. But another game I'm excited about in terms of hardware is, what's that? Astrobot. Now, personally, I think Astrobot is adorable. I really like him as a little PlayStation mascot character. He's great. If you have PSVR, Astrobot Rescue Mission is a great game. Buy it. But Astrobot is getting his own little game that's supposed to showcase the technology of the PS5 rather, and that's supposed to be using all the technology of the DualSense. And DualSense, let's talk about DualSense. It is such an interesting little piece of technology. It's got a design that is much more akin in terms of, just shaping to an Xbox controller, which is great. Supposedly it's got this create button, which I don't even know what that means. It's just a glorified share button, let's be honest, right? But really, the things that excited me the most when I first saw the DualSense controller, the thing that excited me the most about it was the fact that they kept the touchscreen and they kept the speaker. That was very, I wouldn't say that excited me, but that was very fascinating to me. There's also a mute button on there, which is very nice that, you can mute your mic if you want to. That's cool. But they kept the touchscreen, the touchpad, and they kept the speaker, and they also kept the light bar at least somewhat, right? And I found that to be so fascinating because those were arguably two of the most least used features on PlayStation. But, I guess since they've decided and committed to doing backward compatibility, maybe that's why they kept it. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But I guess the most exciting thing about it is that, yes, this thing's going to have motion controls, but more so than that, it's going to have this haptic feedback that Sony's been raving about, where supposedly you're going to be feeling the draw of a bowstring and and just feeling stuff in much more greater detail, and the triggers are going to be adjustable, where the triggers are going to change tension depending on what you're doing and things like that. It's very interesting stuff, and I can't wait to get it in my hands to really see what it's about. But for right now, it's really, I gotta think back to when Nintendo was talking about HD Rumble and the Switch controller. And while I do like the Switch's Rumble, and I think it's pretty neat, it's just how much is this going to matter? How much is this really going to matter in the long run? How much of this is just a gimmick to say, hey, look, we did a cool new thing? And that's what I kind of worry about with the DualSense, because you get all these controllers, right? Like Sony with the six-axis controller. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Sony with the six-axis controller, they hardly use the motion controls past the first couple of years, right? I was shocked when I played The Last of Us Part 2, and I still had to shake my controller to charge up the flashlight. That shocked me. I was like, wow, they didn't forget about this, did they? Huh? That's cool. And when you had to strum the guitar with the touchpad, I was like, oh, that's neat. And I like neat little stuff like that. I'm call me crazy, but I'm a sucker for little party tricks like that. I like that stuff. That stuff's cool to me. But in the long run and in the grand scheme of things, how much is that really going to matter? Now, one thing that really gets me excited about this technology itself is the prospect of what it could bring to the VR field. If you're telling me that you're going to make special VR equipment for the PlayStation 5, like special controllers that use the haptic feedback technology and use the adaptive trigger technology, and I'm going to be able to use those in VR, that could be something really special. That could be a combination that could be really, really special, especially with, again, another piece of hardware in this thing is the integration of 3D audio, where I believe what Mark Cerny said was that they have an entire processor dedicated entirely to the audio on the PlayStation 5. And you're going to be getting 3D audio where it's just, how else can I describe it, How else can I describe it other than the fact that it's going to be kind of like you're in the room. If you're in a room in a game, it should, in theory, feel like you're in that room with this headset on. And they're supporting that with PlayStation 5, and it makes me so excited for VR because I loved VR on PS4 despite its shortcomings, right? But VR on PS5 has got me super excited, and honestly, all of these things have been a massive selling point for me with PlayStation 5. Yeah, it may be shocking, but the prospect of the next PlayStation VR has been extremely exciting for me with PlayStation 5. And I honestly expect us to see VR around 2022. If not announced in 2021, then we're going to be seeing it in 2022, and I expect it to launch in 2022 because I think they want this thing to sit on the market for a little bit before they introduce another piece of hardware. In fact, that's something that was said by, I can't remember his name, but one of these Sony execs said that in an interview when they were talking about, will there be VR at launch? And they were like, well, we're going to focus on the console first, and then we're going to focus on VR afterwards. But yeah, that's exciting. So there's so many exciting things about this console. I love the SSD technology. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. Also, the fact that let's take it back to the SSD. I think we've talked enough about the DualSense. It looks amazing. It looks great. We've talked enough about the 3D audio. That looks great, and I'm excited to see how that's going to be in VR. I'm sure it'll enhance my regular gameplay as well, but mostly in VR. I think that's going to be amazing. But let's take a step back and let's talk about the SSD again. And when Mark Cerny was saying about the SSD, and let's look back at the Jack and Daxter example, because in the tech analysis video that he posted, the first, glimpse at the world of PS5 that he posted when we learned about the specs and everything, he was talking about how in Jack and Daxter, they had to make these long winding corridors because of loading times. And he also brought up the prospect of being able to load and unload data at lightning fast speeds using the SSD. Now, what this would mean, according to what he said, is that potentially game developers would be able to make it so that, say you're playing a first-person shooter, or any game really that involves a camera movement, right? If you move the camera over to the left, then the things that were on the right would, unload, for lack of a better term, but the game would get rid of those things, and they'd only load in the things that you're looking at. And I'm not even sure if the SSD is fast enough to do that. But if it is, that could mean that you'd be able to bring in things over here at much greater detail because you'd be freeing up the GPU and the CPU from having to worry about what's behind you, because there's games, and you can see it if you watch like any sort of videos where the camera is brought the camera is taken out of bounds or whatever like that, and you can see what stuff is loaded in depending on where you're supposed to be looking. And in some games, certain things aren't loaded in if you get far enough away from them, and that's because the developers are wanting to save on RAM. They're wanting to save on that CPU and GPU processing, so they unload certain sets of data. And it's just the prospect of that in Sony's first party really excites me because those guys know their way around hardware, and it's very exciting for me to think what they could do with this technology once they really get moving, once they really get to understanding, and once they really master the SSD. I think we could see some very amazing things from Sony's first party. And I think I'm going to stop there for Sony. Right? I think I'm going to stop there. Those are the major points that I wanted to talk about for Sony that excited me. Let's talk about the console that I predict will be 100% my console of choice for the coming generation, the Xbox Series X. And let's talk about why this is going to be my console of choice. Why it's most likely my console. Like there's like a 98% chance that this is going to be my console of choice. I'm just telling you. And it's not even because I dislike the PlayStation 5. Like I said, I'm very excited for it. I think the technology is going to be great. And I plan on owning both of these systems. But my primary box is going to be the Xbox once again, just like it was this generation. Because Microsoft just... Ooh, man. With the Xbox One X, they got me 100%. I want to play... I'm the type of gamer... I want to play the best version of my games. And let me stop and say this right now, because I know people are going to say, well, why don't you get a PC? Well, I do have a PC, but it's not a super powerful PC. PCs are too expensive. That's all. PCs are too expensive. If I wanted top-of-the-line performance in a PC, it would cost me more money. I don't want to spend that much money. Also, I just like the convenience of a console. I like the convenience of being able to go out to a store, pick up a box, take it home, just plug it in and play it without, going bankrupt. You know what I mean? Without spending thousands of dollars. And all like I prefer consoles. I prefer the ecosystem. I prefer just the comfortability of a console, the convenience of a console, all of that. I just prefer it. It's my preference. PC is great, and PC is always going to have the highest performing games out there. No joke. But PCs are too expensive, and I prefer consoles because they're just more convenient for me. They're more convenient. What can I say? What can I say? Anyway, let me continue. Um, the Xbox Series X is once again the most powerful console on the market. Once again, the Xbox One X was the most powerful console, and now the Xbox Series X is the most powerful console, and that's what I want. I want the most powerful console. I want to be able to play third-party games with the highest performance possible. I want to be able to play older games that I had in previous generations that get enhanced by the hardware. I want to be able to do that. And Microsoft is giving me that. Now, those of you who, know me, may be familiar with me, you know that I'm a big retro gamer. I am a game collector. I own systems dating all the way back to, NES, like all the way up to now. I'm a game collector. My collection is not super huge, but I own a lot of games. I have a lot of Xbox 360 games. I have a bunch of original Xbox games, ton of Xbox One games, and the idea of being able to play, even if it's not all of those titles, but the idea of being able to take some of those titles and play enhanced versions of them on my Series X is very exciting for me. I spend a good amount of time playing older games on my Xbox One. And I know I'm going to get the jokes by saying, like, oh, that's because there's no exclusives on Xbox. The only thing you can play is older games. And sure, whatever. Like, you can say that if you want to. That doesn't affect me at all. But the point is, I play newer third-party releases, some of the first-party releases whenever we get one, right? And I play older games. I get to play all the games that I want, and that's the point. With Microsoft and their ecosystem, I get to play everything that I want, right? Everything that I want. And Xbox just fits into my life so perfectly because, like I said before, I do own a PC. My PC is not built for gaming, I use my PC to make videos and, to do other things, like working and stuff. I use it for school. That's what my PC is for. I'm in school for video production, and like I need a PC where I can edit on, and that's what this is for. It's for that. It's not really a gaming PC, but I can game on it. And there's a select few games that I do play on my PC. I prefer playing Minecraft on PC because sitting at a desk playing that with mouse and keyboard is just more comfortable for me. But it's just nice that I'm able to switch back and forth so seamlessly between playing Xbox on my between playing games on my PC and playing games on my TV by having a console, because here's another thing, right? I have Game Pass Ultimate, and Jesus, now I'm getting into a whole ecosystem talk again, right? I get so excited, every time I play, like I should have a shock collar. Every time I talk about Game Pass, I should just get a little electric jolt, because I talk about it so much, but that's just because it's so good. It's so good. It's ridiculously good. It's the best, right? And I have Game Pass Ultimate. Even if my PC weren't as powerful as it is, right? Even if I just had a laptop. And here's the facts, folks. More people on this planet own computers than they own video game consoles. The average household in America owns at least one computer, right? At least one. And everybody's got a phone. And I've gotten so far away from the hardware conversation, haven't I? But I just get so excited when I talk about this because I just think it's so great. And I think that it's so cool that Microsoft is enabling me to play games wherever I want, whenever I want, on whatever device I want. Phone, PC, Xbox. That's all I'm going to say. I gotta stop myself. We gotta move on. We gotta move on. Let's talk about the hardware. Let's talk about the hardware. All right. So let's talk about the hardware. But I guess that was a thing about the hardware. You know, the backwards compatibility is a thing about the hardware. But whew, speaking of backwards compatibility, we have smart delivery, which is a system. And I guess this isn't a hardware feature, but it's more so just a service that Microsoft is providing. But smart delivery basically makes it so that if you put a disc in, it doesn't matter if it's an old disc, a new disc, a black disc, a blue disc. That was really stupid. Why did I say that? But it doesn't matter, right? If it's a 360 disc or not, or if it's an original Xbox disc, or if it's an Xbox One disc, you're going to be getting the best version of that game when you play it on your Series X. You don't have to buy the enhanced deluxe version or anything like that. You don't have to buy Spider-Man again. Sony, I'm looking at you, because that's really scummy the way you're making people buy Spider-Man again. That's real scummy. I'm just saying. But I know Spider-Man's not on Xbox. Just taking a jab at Sony. Playful jabs, whatever. But you don't have to buy the game again. You will get the best version. When I play Gears 5 on Xbox Series X, I'm going to be playing the best version of Gears 5. When I buy Cyberpunk 2077 and play that on Xbox Series X, I'm going to be playing the best version of Cyberpunk 2077. Point blank, period. At the end of the day, I'm going to have the best version of that game no matter what. Even 360 games. I heard Grand Theft Auto 4 runs like a dream on this thing. If I put that disc in my Xbox Series X, I'm going to be playing the best version of that, and that is a fantastic feature. You've also got the Xbox Velocity architecture, which has quick resume and enhanced load times. And the enhanced load times are great. I've looked at them, and they've reduced the load times drastically on a lot of games, and that's very, very nice, right? That's super cool, They're still there, but they're just, it's much quicker. Like, you're seeing like 80% speed, 80% load time decreases across pretty much all of the games that I've seen. It's been at the least an 80% difference, which is incredible to me. And also there's quick resume, so where you can have games and they, pretty much pause it and hold a save state for you in a certain game, and then you can resume that game later on, like from where you left off, which is another part of the SSD technology, and that's pretty fucking awesome. That's really cool. I really like that. It's got 4K as the standard. It can go up to 120 frames a second, and I believe that PlayStation 5 is supposedly able to do the same thing, but from what I have seen, Demon's Souls is 1440p 60, and that ain't 4K, bro. Like, sorry, it's just not. Like, like, it's not 4K 60, so, what can I say there? 4K 60 is the standard that Microsoft's going. That's the target that Microsoft went for when designing the hardware. But now let's talk about the insides of these consoles. Okay, so we've talked about, just some of the things, and I guess I have more to say about PlayStation because PlayStation's doing, I guess, more interesting things in terms of innovation, even though what Microsoft is doing with their console as a whole is really, like, pretty much the Xbox Series X is like a much more powerful Xbox One. It does everything the Xbox One X did, but better, and it has newer features, right? And I like that. I like that a lot. That's what I want, right? Also, and this is actually a big deal. I almost forgot to talk about this. This is a big deal. All of your Xbox One accessories will work on Xbox Series X. All of them. All of your Xbox One accessories will work. I just bought an arcade stick, which I'm actually going to be doing a video about in a few days because I'm going to be modifying it, and I want to do a video showing off how I modify it and everything. I just bought that, like, I got it a couple days ago, maybe like a week ago, right? And that thing is going to work on my Series X. Guaranteed. It's guaranteed to work on my Series X. That's amazing. That's amazing to me. Like, that's incredible to me. The fact that all the control, I bought a $200 Xbox Elite Series 2 controller. That's going to work on my Series X. No questions asked. No extra peripherals. I can just plug it in and it'll work. I don't even have to use the new controller that comes with the system. I can use that for when I have company. You know, like my accessories are going to work, and that's something that I really don't like about the PlayStation 5 is that if I have a controller now that I really, like using, even if I have like a third party controller, like if I bought one of those Scuff Vantage controllers for super, like that were like $200 or $150 to $200 or something like that, or one of those, custom, enhanced controllers, I got to buy new ones for the PlayStation 5. And, we've had to do that, generally speaking, for pretty much most of our gaming lives. We've had to move on and upgrade controllers. But in this day and age, we shouldn't have to, especially because the DualShock 4 will work on PlayStation 5, but just not for PlayStation 5 games, where it's not the same with the Xbox. And that's mainly because of the fact that I guess Sony's introducing these new features with the DualSense controller that the PlayStation 4's DualShock 4 wouldn't be able to keep up with. And Microsoft was like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they've been having that same attitude for quite a long time now. Seriously, if you don't know, look at the Xbox S controller, like the Xbox original, like the S controller, compared to the 360 and the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that design ain't broke. They've just been subtly improving upon it over the years. And hey, it's worked. It's great. It's the greatest controller ever, in my opinion. But that was just a point that I didn't want to forget. I didn't want to forget the fact that I love that my accessories are going to work on this thing, and that is something that's baked into the hardware. But overall, yeah, I guess the PlayStation's hardware is more interesting because they're doing weirder stuff. The Xbox is interesting because it's powerful and it can do everything that I want it to do as a gamer. But with PlayStation, it's like, hey, they're doing all this weird stuff, and it's that's why I'm so excited to see PlayStation, because I'm like, what are they gonna do with this? This is kind of cool. What are they gonna do with this? But that's just me. I feel like in the long run, the Xbox Series X is still gonna be better, but the PlayStation 5 is still gonna be pretty damn cool. It's gonna have some neat stuff, some neat gimmicks, I should say. I guess it's gonna have some neat gimmicks, but I don't want to play it up as like as though I think that because of DualSense and because of the haptic feedback and the 3D audio, I think that my experience is going to be better on PlayStation over on Xbox, because I don't. I think that stuff's going to be cool, just like how I think PlayStation VR is cool, but I play with that thing a few times, like maybe like, in the span of like a few months, I might turn that on like maybe 2 or 3 times, and every time it's fun, but I think you get what I'm saying, like I don't think that necessarily for me gives it an edge over the Xbox in terms of which I'm going to use more. But let's talk about the teardowns, right? Microsoft did their teardown a long time ago, ages and ages ago. Sony finally did theirs like a couple of days ago, and it was some interesting stuff. Before, actually, what? Real quick, I just want to talk about the designs of the systems. I love the Xbox Series X design. It's very simple. It's a tower of power. Boom, sits right there. You play games on it. It looks like a sleek, modern machine that you play games on. The Xbox Series S, which I haven't talked about this video because, honestly, I don't want that thing. I think that's going to be good for some people, and the specs of that are cool, and it does everything the Xbox... Basically, all right, real quick, before we move on, right? Xbox Series S does everything the Xbox Series X does at 1440p. Boom. Done. That's it. That's what it does. Let's move on. The Series S design, people have made fun of it. I actually really think it's a very nice design because, again, it's a sleek, small, modern box, and I think it's going to look very nice in people's entertainment centers. I just think it will. I think that's really what I like about these designs, is that they're very contemporary. They're very, modern. They're very, like, hey, this is something that would sit in your entertainment center, and like that's how I feel about these designs. That's just how I feel about it. And people have stuff that's kind of like towers like this. Like people have like those like Amazon hubs and stuff like that. And like the Google Nest hubs and, whatever other shit that they have. And those things can get pretty big, they can be like little towers. Like I know my mother has like one of those Amazon Echo Cubes. I think my sister has one of those like Amazon like hubs or something like that, and it's it's like a little cube that sits there. And I think the Xbox Series X, while it's definitely bigger than that, I do like that design. But boy, oh boy, I love I am in love with the PlayStation 5 design. Uh, and if you know me, you know that one of my favorite video game consoles ever is the PlayStation 3, the original fat one that could play PS2 games. I love that thing. And I loved its design because it just looked like a piece of technology. You know what I mean? It looked like some futuristic, you ain't ever seen nothing like this before type of technology. And that's what PS5 looks like. And I think that from a visual standpoint, it looks incredibly sleek and interesting. It's like a showpiece, you know? And that's what they said when they designed. They said they wanted to be something that that would catch people's eyes when they're entering your home, something that would look nice in your home. And I think the PS5 does that. It looks really cool. It looks very nice. It's a very and it manages to look bold yet sleek and modern at the same time. It looks bold and interesting without looking like I don't know, maybe like too weird. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. I like it. Do you like it? Because I like it. I don't know. But let's talk about the teardowns, right? Teardown of the Xbox One happened a long time ago. Microsoft tore this thing down. They talked about how it was on the inside. And I'm going to go and talk about this briefly because I am not a tech expert. If you want a full, analysis of how the technology works for the system, I don't know, talk to Digital Foundry because those guys are the experts, not me. Whew. Oh boy. I'm out of breath, right? The teardown of the Xbox Series X was really cool. They're using a split motherboard, and they designed what they said with the whole design of the console was that they designed the console around the hardware. They had a performance target, and they were like, listen, we need to hit this performance target. We don't care what this thing looks like. We need it to have this, X amount of power, right? And well, that's what they did, that's pretty much what they did, and it looks great on the inside. It's got this fan at the top that cools the whole entire system. They're using a heat pipe. I think there's like a big heat sink. There's a massive heat sink in there, actually, if I remember correctly. A big heat sink in there. They're not messing around with this thing. They're making sure that it stays cool, stays quiet, plays the games you need to play. And it's very interesting. I recommend you look at the teardown videos, but it's interesting to me just the way they built this system because it's so unconventional, especially when in the way that it looks. It's so unconventional, but it's so interesting in the way that they built it. Because it doesn't really look like a standard console, but when you really look at all the pieces stacked up together, and I really highly recommend you take a look if you haven't already at some of the videos. I believe Digital Foundry and Austin Evans did videos where they were invited to Xbox headquarters and they actually showed them all the pieces to the system. And this was they did this months and months ago. And it's just a very, very fascinatingly designed system. I think the internals look really cool and really interesting. I don't know all about the tech stuff, but dang, it looks cool. I don't just the way they did it. I don't know, just the way they did it. It looked cool. I don't know. It just looked cool to me. It looked like, wow, this is interesting. It's just the split motherboard is what really got me because I don't think we've ever seen that in a console before. At least none that I know of. A split motherboard design. And just this giant, massive fan at the top to cool the whole thing. Very interesting stuff. And one more thing that I will talk about is the storage options. Now, Microsoft's option comes with a terabyte of their own storage, which is like their own custom NVMe SSD. And you can buy a separate external 1 terabyte SSD card that they're partnering with Seagate to manufacture. It's going to cost you around $230, right? Around $230. I think $220 actually. $220, $230. It's pretty expensive though. And let's talk about Sony's real quick. Let's talk about Sony's console and their teardown. Sony's console looks more traditional. It's a single motherboard design. It's got one big ass fan, and this is one major point. Both of these systems have big ass fans. I mean, the Xbox Series X was designed for airflow, so there's a lot of they designed it and they in a way where they knew exactly where the air would flow through the system to cool it the way that it properly needs to be cooled in order to reach that performance benchmark and to be able to run at that at its base, which is very fascinating. The PlayStation 5 has a big ass fan and it's got some vents in the front, because they're like, people complained a lot, and I'm one of the people who complained a lot about this. Um, PS4s are loud as shit. My PS4 Pro, when I was playing Last of Us Part 2, it was like a little mini vac. It was like a little mini vacuum. It was like an airplane. It was so loud. And I haven't had my PS4 Pro for very long, and I can prove it because it's the God of War Special Edition PS4 Pro. So I've only had it for like 2 years, right? That thing is loud as shit. It's loud, and it was loud when I got it. It's not quiet. It's not a quiet system. It's not. From what I've gathered, though, both of these systems are whisper quiet, and I believe they both handle heat very well. From what I've gathered, now Xbox Series X's are already out in the wild. Journalists have them already, right? Journalists don't have PS5s yet, so really, you know, take it as you will. It's you can take Sony's word for it, but since we don't have, actual journalists with these in their hands yet, we can't really say for sure whether or not it gets really hot. And of course, even in the case of the Series X, which has been out in the wild, we can't really say for sure until we have them in our own homes how hot they get or how loud they get. But from what I can gather right now, they're both pretty quiet systems. Now, the PlayStation 5 has a big ass fan. I said that. Now this and it's a big deal because people have criticized PlayStation many times in the past for having really cheap, shoddy fans that cause the systems to overheat and thus rev up the fans to astronomically high audio levels. And they said that this fan is supposed to be quieter or whatever. Other than that, though, it's very, very basic. It's very basic system design. It's just the architecture, the outer shelling looks so cool. It just looks so cool. But other than that, it looks very basic. It looks like any other system you'd ever see. It looks like any other system you'd ever see. You can look at the teardown yourself if you want to look at all the tech stuff and whatever. But like I said, I don't know shit about that, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. I just think it looks cool. That's all. And they did show their SSD options, and Western Digital came out and showed off some new SSDs that are the new NVMe SSD cards that are compatible with PS5. And guess what, folks? The prices are about the same as the Xbox's prices. Total bummer. Yep. Yeah, they're about the same. They're about the same. You're gonna be, if you want a terabyte of storage, you're gonna be paying around like $230 for it. Sorry, sucks. Storage is gonna suck this year, but you can do my method, which is to uninstall games that I don't have anymore. And actually, funny enough, I commented that on one of Ryan McCaffrey. He's from IGN. I commented that on one of his posts, and I was shocked that he responded to me because I'm basically like a nobody, right? So he responded to me, and he brought up this point where he said, and you can check my Twitter or check his. Actually, I think check my Twitter because like I don't tweet as much as he does, so it'll be easier to find. But he made the point of saying that some people have data caps and they're not able to download as many games a month. But it's like, for me, I'm like, look, even if I don't download that many games a month. I don't swap games that many times a month for I think even an issue if I did have a data cap, which I don't. But for people who do have data caps, that is a real thing. Some people, live in areas where they're not able to get the best internet, or some people do have data caps. And yeah, he recommended to use like a USB flash drive to store your games and to then, install them onto your PlayStation whenever you, or your Xbox. I'm not sure if PlayStation can do this too, but I know on your Xbox you can. He recommend to install them from there onto your system to save bandwidth if you need to, which is a pretty neat suggestion. I'd follow that if that's an issue for you. But my nonsensical ramblings, I think, are coming to an end now. I didn't mention the Xbox Series X controller because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think I said that. I think I might have said that. I don't know. Yeah, I lose track of myself sometimes, folks. But hey, thanks for sticking in. Jesus Christ, tuning into Orbit this week. We'll be back again next week. Next week, we are definitely going to have a guest. I'm going to be working very, very hard to figure out what we're going to talk about, but I will definitely have a guest next time. It won't just be me here rambling for 45 minutes. I can't even believe I managed to talk this long, but hey, here it is. Here I am, talking, still talking. Now it's getting awkward, so let's move on. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you guys think about the hardware of both of these systems. I think that we're in for a treat. These are two systems that are approaching next gen with very different pieces of hardware, right? Very different pieces of hardware. And I'm interested to see what each of them are going to do. Very, very interested. I can't wait to get my Series X. I can't wait to get my PS5. I'm going to be playing games forever till the day I die. It's great. I love video games. Oh my God, such a fucking nerd. All right, let me stop embarrassing myself. Everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week with more Orbit. Peace out.